Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, I'm Victoria Ballou, publisher of Astrology magazine. Today, I'm thrilled to invite you to sit back and absorb all the insights financial astrologer Barry Rosen has to offer. He shares his broad insights every month in Astrology magazine in his exclusive category, Astrofinance, giving all our readers a look at what's coming ahead for the month. Today, he's diving even deeper with his expertise and wisdom. Barry has been involved with financial astrology since 1987 and is the leading Vedic financial astrologer in the world. And he's spoken several times at the British Association of Vedic Astrology, the United Astrology Conference, and the Sedona Vedic Astrology Conference on financial astrology. He has published numerous articles on the topic in leading journals, including NCGR Journal and GAN and Elliott Wave. He has appeared twice on the cover of Timer Digest as a major market timer in his field. And more recently, he has been focused on the spiritual and psychological dimensions of Vedic astrology. And this course is a counseling program that he is beginning. If you have questions, type them into the area that is called questions, and Barry will answer them at the end. And as a reminder, this episode will be recorded so that you can replay it at any time. Hello, Barry.
Thank you, Victoria. Good to be here, and welcome to I'm calling it my first class. When I offer a new series of classes, I make the first class kind of a real class. It's an introduction to what the whole course is about, but it's also a real class where you'll get a lot of deep knowledge because it's kind of like the first day of college. You have to kind of there's certain things you just have to cover, which are kind of overview material, but they're important. So that's what we'll be doing today. I usually lecture, and if I take questions, I do it during pauses, like if I or at the end of the talk. And as you said, you can put questions into the chat. And I stand to the shoulders of many great teachers, and I'd like to thank all of them. This is my contact information. Let me just share a little bit about myself. I've been involved in financial astrology since 1987, which is kind of unbelievable. We're going on, almost 38 years or something like that. And I was kind of fascinated by what made the markets move. I would look at that time, the Financial News Network and why was corn up and gold down on this particular day. So I was kind of fascinated in unlocking the secrets of collective conscious behavior and market psychology. And I studied with a lot of Western astrologers. I had a Vedic astrology background, so I was able to bring a lot of the depth of Vedic astrology to what I also learned from the Western astrologers. And, over time, I built a business out of it, Forecast Market Timing, which is still running since 1988 when I published my first monthly newsletter, and predicting the markets. I taught classes on financial astrology for a number of years. I haven't taught for about 10 years, and there seems to be kind of a growing interest in the subject, so I kind of decided to revive it. And this is kind of a vast subject because, I've taught a 42 lesson course on investment astrology on how markets react and the psychology of markets. So that's even one topic. Mundane astrology, which is, how countries and world leaders and businesses are kind of impacted by transits and dashas and things like that, is another kind of 15-week class. And I've taught classes on money karma. They're available on my website, which is more about the personal side of financial astrology, about your budgets and your investment skills and your problems with savings and debting and things like that. So that's a whole nother area. And if you're interested in that area, you'll probably, you could buy those classes online. I usually start with some Vedic chanting and get the gods on our side and honoring the great god Ganesha, god of astrology. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Vakritunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprapa, Nirigam Kurame Deva, Sarvakarishi Sarvada. Dhyana Mulam Guru Murti, Bujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Padam, Panchamulam Guru Padam. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrichoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, some of you may be aware of my monthly financial astrology magazine, which I started this year. The next session is on April 14th. You can subscribe to single or multiple sessions at my website. That's kind of where I go over the transits of the month and talk about the impact on the markets. And I look at key geopolitical events in the news and key upcoming geopolitical events. So that's not something that we're going to do today, and that is available in my monthly video magazine. And for those of you who need daily investment information, I do publish daily. And for astrologers and people in astrology, I have a $200 discount on a yearly subscription. It's only $2 a day, really. It's less than a Starbucks coffee, so it's a great deal. And we have a new class coming up on Vargas in August, and you'll be hearing about that. Okay. So let's say a little bit about this course. As I mentioned, it's kind of a survey course because I kind of wanted to cover a number of different avenues. And some people are more interested just in investment astrology, and there will be some of that in the class. And there's some people that are more interested in predicting world events, and we'll have material on that. And some people are interested in how can I improve my trading? And even we're gonna have a section on basic looking at charts so that you know how to analyze charts. So that's coming up. So it's a 10-week course. It's $395. It will be every Tuesday at this time, and if you can't attend, it will be recorded and you can replay it, or if you want to replay it, so it'll always be available. So again, the early bird deadline is next week. The class will start next Thursday and go for 10 weeks. And for those of you who do decide to take the course, I will throw in a free month of my newsletter for you. Okay. This is what the course will cover. And again, sometimes the order of the classes changes a little bit. Sometimes I decide we need to do an extra class on something. Sometimes I think we need, I'll add something. Usually people get extra classes, and I'll call for 10 and we'll do 11. So that's probably what will happen. So, it's going to kind of cover a lot of different materials. I mean, again, we'll go over core principles of financial astrology next week in the first class. We'll do some of that today. We'll learn about financial charts, which is if you look at a chart of gold over the last week or the last month or the last year, how to kind of look at chart patterns and understand them a little bit. So we'll do some basic charting for people, which, is really, it's not astrological, but it's necessary in order to kind of combine it with the astrology. We'll look at your karma for investing and trading in your own charts, and we'll look at a little bit of that today too. I have a little segment on each one of these topics today to give you a taste of them, but we'll go into great depth about them later in the course. We'll learn some long-term techniques for predicting people's favorites, which are the stock market and metals, things like gold and silver, and crypto. So we'll have at least 2 lessons, maybe 3 lessons on trading and predicting those specific markets. Again, I have 42 lessons on investment and astrology, and it's actually quite complicated, but we'll try to get some of the core principles down for you in about 3 lessons. Then I have a technique for showing how you can use Jupiter transits and even Rahu transits to kind of pick stock sectors. And so we'll have a lesson on that. I've added something which is important, which is understanding corporate charts and business astrology. So this is something that's hardly taught, and um, at least we should get an overview of it. So what do the houses if you have a corporate chart, what do the houses and the planets in a corporate chart mean? I mean, they're similar, but they're obviously slightly different. So I decided to add that because it's part of business astrology. And then a couple lessons, maybe even 3 lessons on mundane astrology. There's a lot of it, mundane astrology is a um, vast arena also. I mean, people are particularly interested in the charts of countries and what's going to happen in a particular country. We can do some of that, but there are other aspects of mundane astrology. We're looking at general economic patterns. Every time you have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, every 20 years, it has kind of a certain kind of tendency with larger economic cycles and things like that. So we'll look at some of that. So kind of a vast array of different things for you to study. And again, probably there will be a part 2 to this class in January, and we'll see what direction people want to go in. But I just wanted to do a survey course, and I said each one of these topics could be elaborated in greater detail. Okay. Anyway, if you're interested in signing up for the class, again, it's on my website, appliedvedicastrology.com. Click under the live webinar tab, and you can do it. If you need a payment plan, most people have payment plans with their credit cards. You can email me if you need a PayPal payment plan, but I'm happy to help with that. I understand budgets can be crazy. Okay. So let's talk about some core issues about money and spirituality, which seem to be kind of opposing ideas in a sense. But I think this is where we have to start. And it's very funny because I was very fascinated by financial markets, making a lot of money in financial markets, and I was very successful. And then I started attracting a lot of gamblers to my business, and I didn't really want to support gambling, which is really kind of the low side of the investment industry. And there's a lot of people have a little bit of a gambler in them, so the difference between gambling and investing is that the sattvic part of it is investment, which is that we're saving wealth regularly to have wealth for retirement, and that we learn how to kind of go in and out at the right time so that our retirement nest egg is healthy and we can live an abundant life at our retirement. There's a lot of people that just want to get rich quick next year on Bitcoin and retire, or trade Tesla every day and and hope that they'll make a small fortune. And I don't encourage that kind of activity, because it the more you trade, the more you get into trouble. So one of the problems that I've noticed is that spirituality and money do go together. It's kind of like the base chakra is connected to our infrastructure, and if we don't have a solid financial basis, we can't develop our spirituality. And I know people who have been meditating for a long time, and they're like inverted pyramids. They can't pay their rent. They're living on the edge, and yeah, they have a lot of deep experiences in meditation, but they're not grounded. So ideally, we want both, because if we have a strong financial basis to our life in the base chakra, then we can go high in our spiritual development. And so I do think they support each other. It's very funny. I've moved my astrology or teaching level to doing more spiritual astrology classes and psychological classes. I really stopped teaching financial astrology maybe around about 10 years ago, but it seems to be coming back because everybody seems to be interested in it. So I decided to bring it back, as long as we are conscious about investment versus gambling. We also should remember that wealth is not just physical money. There's a wonderful talk I have in my Money Karma course on the 8 aspects of Lakshmi, and there's 8 names of Lakshmi, and they're connected to health, success, the ability to fulfill your desires, happiness, prosperity, friendliness, courage, relationship skills, talent, and memory of our source. So originally, the concept of wealth in the Vedic culture was more expanded. I mean, sometimes you meet people that have inherited money and they have a lot of physical money, but they can't make anything happen. They're always going through divorces. They're pretty miserable. So wealth should be eventually the development of all aspects of these. Okay, I just heard there's a problem with the audio. Hopefully we're still good. Okay. Big question we always have to ask is, why do we want money? Is it for safety and security? And again, that gets us into kind of fear mode. If I have enough money, I'll be safe. Of course, that is kind of an illusion. You had all these wealthy people in Kuwait when the Kuwait War hit, and they were fighting over scraps of bread in the desert. So, it's all kind of an illusion. But people in a Rahu period often just get caught up in gambling and more and more and more, and it can be a little craving. So you have to really look at that. So we always have to kind of strive for something higher if we want to make lots of money, and that, we should be thinking like philanthropists. How can I show the universe that I want to help money with my wealth? And I think I've always had an aspiration, and I think tithing is a very important part of money and making money, and I always encourage people to regularly tithe. I've written articles about it because it's one of the highest things you can do, because you're showing the universe by creating more wealth, you're going to share that wealth with others. I think that's very important. So key definitions, and I mentioned this quickly before. So we have business astrology, which is reading maybe corporate charts, and that's one aspect. I decided to add a lesson on that because I think it's important. We have investment astrology, which is timing markets using astrology. And again, and my specialty with that is mundane astrology. As I'll teach you, it's pretty hard to find a reliable natal chart that you can use. There's some of them that you can, but most of the times the starting time is in question and the chart's in question, and it's kind of a mess sometimes. But sometimes we have natal charts that we could trade off. Most of the time we have to kind of trade off larger planetary mundane things. We have personal finance, which is covered in my Money Karma 1 and 2 classes, and that's more about your relationship with money and savings and income, and what's best how can I make money from my chart by doing work that's going to generate money. So those are the type of things I cover in that course. I'm not covering that material. That is available in Money Karma 1 and 2. And then mundane astrology, which is predicting world events and countries and presidents and things like that. And I used to be one of the top people in this area, and then I kind of stopped doing it because it doesn't make anybody happy. And there's a lot of ego involved in it because, it's a big deal. You predicted some earthquake in Turkey, did anybody listen to you? Could you really help anybody with it? I'm kind of fascinated by it now because of the economies of countries and the politics of countries. I still am kind of fascinated by it, and I do write about it in my newsletter sometimes too. So I do want to incorporate some of that into the course, and so we'll do some of that, maybe about 3 lessons worth. But again, we need to do 15 at some point. So what can we do today? We can give you a taste of a lot of the things that we're going to cover in the course. So the talk may seem a little scattered because we're going to, have a little bit from each one of the lessons or each one of the topics, and that's more so just to give you kind of a flavor, and then as we get into the course, we'll go into more depth. But some of the material is core, and we may not even repeat it because it will be part of this first class. And I also want to remind people that charts are, when we do natal charts, they are very complicated. They're very multidimensional and dynamic. First of all, we always have to rotate the chart around the dasha period that's happening, and that's always important, and that gets left out. We always have to look at long transits of Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, and Jupiter in the chart because they have a long impact. Um, there are dasha systems that are very useful for the material world called Rashi dashas. There's one that we'll touch on in the course called Chara dasha, and it's very good for countries because you can see the country is in an 8th house period based on the sign that's rotated in, and you can, it gives you some idea, or it's in a 9th house, 9th sign, so it's kind of interesting. And then we have, so I like to think that Vedic astrology is more like a 3D chessboard, and it's not like a line in stone, and it's very important to kind of be aware of that. And that also happens with the Varga charts, and we'll be teaching those starting in September in depth. Okay, so let's talk about money in all the houses. We're going to start with some building blocks now. We'll look at houses and signs and planets in relationship to financial astrology because they have their own language in a sense. I'd like to see money in all the houses. So first house is status, fame, livelihood, and proficiency. So people with Saturn or Ketu in the first house, they generally have low self-esteem. And if you have low self-esteem, you're going to have trouble attracting people to you, or you're going to have trouble attracting wealth, or having trouble getting a job. It's kind of a core issue. So first house is, obviously is always the most important part of it. It's the operating system of the chart. Second house is savings. It's our attitude towards saving. It's usually something we've developed from our parents. Second house is also family, so it's family money. So if we have a good, strong second house, maybe we've inherited money from our family, or which is more the 8th house. But we can have a good attitude towards money. I think we have in the Money Karma course we have a talk on the second house, and if you put malefics in the second house, we just have a bad attitude toward finance. Third house is courage. It represents entrepreneurial energy. We need a third house, a strong third house to have our own business. And it's also income from investment. It's the 11th from the 5th. So 5th house is the house of investment. The 11th from the 5th is income from. So we can look at that house for income from investment. The 4th house is property, vehicles, comforts, agricultural land. Also important because planets in an aspect the 10th house. 5th house is the house of investment, speculation. You can even think of children as wealth. Probably the most important and best house in the zodiac is the 5th house. But if you have a lot of malefics connected to the 5th house, you may have trouble with investing, or if the 5th house lord is poorly placed in the 12th house or something, you may have problems with investing. So it's something to always look at. 6th house is a house of debt and theft. It's second from the 5th, so it's savings from investment. So one of the things that people fail to look at is the 6th house is whether we can make and hold money from investment. So the 11th from the 5th, the 3rd is important, and then the 2nd from the 5th, which is the 6th house, is important to see if we can hold on to our money and make money from investment. And some people can't. 7th house is business partnership, commercial activities, diplomacy. It's an important business house because it's the 7th is the 10th from the 10th, and it's the 4th from the 4th, so it's a place of professional happiness. The 8th house is a money house in that it's inheritance, unearned money from insurance or lotteries. It can be losses if we have a lot of malefics there. It can be divorce money, money from partnership. Sometimes if you have a strong benefic in the 8th house, it might be your partner might be making a lot of money and it becomes part of your net worth. The 9th house, again, is the Bhaga house for luck, wealth. Wealth is education, higher education. 10th house is profession, power, ambition, trade. Now, if you study with me, the 10th house is really not where you look for your job. It's actually kind of your planets in the 10th house color your attitude about work. You don't want K2 or there, but what kind of work you do is seen from all kinds of other things. I have a 16-week class on that, but it's not, the answer is not in the 10th house, which is a surprise for most people. The 11th house is a house of all gains, income, fulfillment of desires, and it turns out that the 11th house is more networking and friends, and then we have to use some advanced techniques, which are in my other courses, on the 11th from the Arudalagna, which is where we look to see how we manifest income. The 12th house is investment expenditures for business expansion, laws is repayment of debt, and living abroad. So that's all good stuff. Okay, we don't really need to look at this. So signs means, when we're talking about industry and business, signs have kind of a different colorations, and sometimes we have to extrapolate new energies because the ancient Vedic text, in the ancient Vedic text we didn't have the internet and we didn't have biotech and things like that. But some of the ancient, Vedic texts talk about certain things like Aries is connected to wheat, so there's a Mars component to wheat, to wool, which no one really cares too much about. Machinery is very, the engineering sign is Aries. Iron and steel and coal are very connected to Aries. Stock shares, which is something the books say, although I don't, maybe it's because it's risk taking. Metals, there's a component of metals in Aries and also diamonds. On a practical level, you can also think of, okay, it's connected to sports and competition, so baseball teams and professional baseball teams, athletic stores. Aries is also connected to sales. A lot of salesmen come out of Aries. So there are other things in Aries too. Taurus is connected to, in the Vedic text, say sugar and wheat, to clothes, which makes sense, to cotton, to stock exchanges, to cattle, again, Taurus the bull, to banks and banking. So we can always remember that banks and banking are connected to Taurus, and finance in general is a Taurus thing, holding onto your money. Taurus likes to hold on to things. Taurus also likes jewelry and things like that. Gemini, obviously connected to publications, railway, vehicles, casinos, colleges and education. Usually Gemini is more primary education. Sagittarius is more higher education, ninth house. But telephones, internet, also like a good engineering component to Gemini. Ardra Nakshatra has a lot of engineering energy in it, so it's a lot of things there. Einstein is Ardra Nakshatra, and he was like a physicist and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good energy there. Sign of Cancer, often traditionally connected to silver, landed property, cruise lines. Again, things connected to the water. Cancer is very connected to agriculture, and a lot of people pay attention to agriculture. I mean, it feeds us, but the moon is very connected to agricultural. Cancer is very connected to agriculture. Also, things like milk, restaurants, hotels, and even municipal bonds, city bonds. I don't know why they come out of Cancer, but they do. Leo is, the Vedic texts say, gold. Currencies. Sun is connected to currencies, so people who trade foreign currencies, you need a strong sun. Casinos, gambling is somehow connected to Leo. Stock brokerage companies, stockbrokers come out of Leo. Virgo, traditionally the Vedic texts say corn and grains. It's also connected to the professional health industry, so hospitals and medical centers and things like that are very connected to Virgo. Foodstuffs in general, a lot of food is a very kind of Virgo thing. Libra is connected to wheat and cotton and silk, and of course things like fashion and beauty and jewelry and painting and music and things like that. Libra is also a sign very connected to marketing. People don't realize that. I mean, if you meet a lot of Libras, they're good at networking, they're good at talking to people. Libra is a very kind of good sign for marketing. Scorpio is a research sign, eighth sign of the zodiac. For some reason, chemicals go in Scorpio, poisons, I guess. Um, when I talk to people, sometimes, I mention chemistry. Psychology is a big part of Scorpio. Spirituality, astrology are big parts of Scorpio. But I mention chemistry to people, and they say, "Oh, I used to be a pharmacist." I was. So it's interesting. Very interesting. The meat markets are connected to Scorpio. Sagittarius is connected to clothes, arms. Again, Sagittarius is the only sign with a bow and arrow. It's a warrior sign. And so arms are connected to Sagittarius, foreign bonds, shares, insurance, military equipment, also airy, travel agencies. Insurance is part of Sagittarius. I don't quite know why. Capricorn is mining, right? Of course, the dark mines of Capricorn. Iron, black things, oil, things that grow under the ground are very Capricorn. Aquarius, electricity, electronics, technology, biotech, research companies, casinos. So Aquarius again is co-ruled by Rahu, and Westerners say it's connected to Uranus. So you definitely get electronics, and the constellation of Sadabishak is connected to biotech, and I see that over and over again. And biotech's big now. And we have Rahu about to go into Sadabishak in transit, and that really push biotech stocks up, probably. Pisces, water things, of course, fish products, breweries, diamonds, pearls, oils, sometimes connected with Pisces, pharmaceuticals, kind of the Neptune component, gasoline and oil products. Okay, so those are some traditional things that you can go deeper with that. So looking at planets in business, so we're kind of doing ABCs now because, in a sense, we can't. I mean, doing predictions, we have to kind of be able to have the ABCs under our belt. So we have to know that Sun means something and Leo means something, and so that's kind of, we're doing some building blocks today. Planets in business and finance. So the Sun and the sign of Leo, authority, power, vitality, presidents, CEOs, senior officers, political leaders, citizens of stature. So, Leo, of course, as you know, is the leadership sign, and CEOs come out of Leos. When I find Leo risings, I often find they are entrepreneurs by nature. They like to have their own businesses. It's just kind of the nature of Leo to be entrepreneurial, if the sun is strong. So it creates industrialists and multimillionaires. It's also places of entertainment, so that's we get casinos connected to Leo on the sun. Bankers somehow are often connected to Leo. Stock markets, stock exchanges, stocks, also gold and currencies. Okay, currencies is the one that people don't always think of, but it's important. Okay, the moon. We have the moon's second most important planet in the chart. Sign of Cancer, rules price fluctuations because it governs emotion and psychology, and so the moon's happy and prices go up, the moon's not happy, prices go down. I mean, sometimes it's that simple, often it's more complicated. Moon governs the masses, the common people, public opinion. It's connected to commodities. I started adding commodities, whether it's grains or milk or all the commodities have this kind of moon component. Retail outlets, department stores, hotels, and catering and restaurants. Yeah, food. Where do we get this connection? Moon is very much connected to food because of mother's milk. It's the primary food that we all are born with, and so moon is very important for food in our chart, and our connection with and a relationship with food is going to be very connected to our moon. But so Moon, as an extension, it gets connected to catering and restaurants and Cancer places to call home when we travel, hotels and things like that. Governs crops, dairies, milk, breweries and beverages, glass industry, silver pearls, real estate, and real estate agents. So yeah, you get a lot of realtors connected to the sign of Cancer. Okay, Aries, Mars, Aries and Scorpio, attack, assault, takeovers. If you get, sometimes a company will do a forced bid on another company, try to take it over by buying all their stock, and sometimes they have lots of money and they can do it. That's kind of a Martian thing, of course. Mars is connected to, obviously, defense, military, police, ammunition, armed forces, all the things that we like when we're little boys and like to play with guns. It's all Mars. Surgeons are connected to Mars, dentists, butchers, metal industries, chemical factories, furnaces, fire, obviously. Engineers are very Martian. Aries can be, Saturn often owns the 10th house for an Aries rising. And I meet a lot of people who are Aries rising who become engineers because of that connection. Mechanics, iron and steel workers, metal, iron, things like that. Tobacco is a Martian thing, coffee, tea, petrochemicals, things like that. Mercury and Gemini and Virgo are part of that. Communications, obviously, literary pursuits, accounting, publishing. Accounting is very Virgo, it's kind of a thing that Virgos do. Newspapers, media, we have the internet, libraries, all these things. I've got Jupiter and Gemini, and I've done all the Gemini things. I was a librarian, I was a college professor, I was a software designer at some point even. It was kind of fascinating. I'm a writer, so it's very, very interesting. Textiles, again, cotton, wheat, silver. I don't never think of silver in Gemini, but it's possible. Jupiter, planet of expansion. Expands prices, expands your weight. Get Jupiter transiting through your ascendant, you're going to gain some pounds, right? Religion, philosophy, finance and capitalism, education, institutions, banking, brokers, speculators, financial gains, finance, things like that. Judges, lawyers, legal affairs, that kind of academics are very, very Jupiter. Venus, our favorite benefic, connected to Taurus and Libra, harmony and peace, of course. See if we get a peace accord at the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in August. Been watching that for a while. Will Hamas finally decide to sign? It's been kind of pending for a while. Government expansion, textile industries, again, cotton and fabric and things like that. Fashion design, art, cosmetics, vehicles, things like that. Treaties with other countries. We have a lot of that going on now. And probably a lot's going to get done with Venus conjunct Jupiter and Gemini. Cotton, sugar, wheat, rice, and silver. Copper. Venus has a copper. Isn't copper. I don't know why. The first thing I ever traded was copper. It's Venus and the Sun. Actually, if you go to the London Copper Exchange in Great Britain, I think they have the symbol of Venus on the door. Again, an ancient symbol. So who knew? Kind of interesting. Foods and hotels. Again, like the Moon, jewelry, film industry, marketing and sales, and merchants. Okay, Saturn. Saturn's really one of the important business planets. So the two business planets are really Mercury, who's the businessman, and Saturn. And somehow we don't think of Saturn as a businessman, but really Saturn is about infrastructure and democracy. The elderly farmers are very connected to Saturn. Farm products, mining, we talked about, public buildings. Government is very connected to Capricorn and Saturn, steel plants and coal mines, things like that. But it is the other business planet, and I think to be successful as a business person, I think you really have to have both a strong Saturn and a strong Mercury. Um, Rahu in Aquarius. Rahu co-owns Aquarius. It also co-owns Virgo, according to Sanjay Roth, and I think it's really accurate. But political plotting, spying, epidemics, electronic and technological equipment, aerial navigation. So this is all kind of Aquarian things. Gambling, we know that. Scientific invention. So we forget Aquarius is very connected to scientific research. A lot of scientists come out, are Aquarius rising. Inventors, psychologists too. Internet, wireless, and electronic goods come out of Aquarius too. Biotech, again, Saturn Bishop, and Rahu tends to kind of create cravings, so it tends to make things go up too, like Jupiter. And K2 takes away, it's into co-ruler of Scorpio, connected to spirituality, asceticism, spiritual initiation, enlightenment. K2 can be connected to military prowess. It's connected to computer programming and cryptos, which is very funny because the ancients used to talk about K2 and the workings of a watch. So now the workings of a watch get kind of moved to the workings of a computer, and now cryptos are kind of an extension, or a K2 extension. So when we look at cryptos later in the course, we have to look at K2 very important as the Karaka. Again, K2 takes away sometimes it to point you toward God. It's always reminding you that you're not here to accumulate huge amounts of money, but you're here to help others and accumulate God. Okay. Hold on a second. I have to pass something on to an office member. I'll be right back. Rob needs my... Okay. K2, sorry to have interrupted you. Somebody's fixing my computer, and I have to get them. Sure, you get inundated 5 times a day for secondary code so people can get in. Okay. Okay, so keywords. Let me just quickly look and see if there's any quick questions I can answer. I'm not seeing anything in the question box yet, so we'll continue. Okay. So keywords for signs of the zodiac. So there are kind of bullish or bearish quality. When we're doing investment astrology, certain signs have certain energies. And you can watch this. For example, the sign of Cancer is considered the most bullish sign, emotionally sensitive and persuasive. So even Jupiter going into Cancer later in the year is going to continue to support the bull market, and the stock market is a Cancer rising entity too. So still more expansion coming for the stock market. The other bullish signs are the water signs, Scorpio and Pisces. This natal chart for the stock market of the United States is Cancer rising with the moon in Pisces. So again, a lot of bullish energy, and it's kind of going up and keeps going up since the beginning of time, pretty much. Taurus, again, is another bullish sign, but it's kind of more obstinate. Again, it's prosperous and earthy. Aries is considered more of a bearish sign because it's fiery and aggressive and active. It's a fire sign. So when you see the planets moving from Pisces into Aries, which happens, sometimes in clusters, you can suddenly have things, that were going up strongly in Pisces kind of start falling in Aries, that kind of thing. Gemini is kind of, as we know, is a vacillating sign, creates upsets, indecisive, dualistic. So when we have a lot of planets in Gemini, we can get kind of more wild ups and downs and unexpected movements. Leo is fiery, but it's more bearish. in a sense because it's a fire sign. It tends to be more bearish. Virgo is steady. It's an earth sign. Libra is bearish. You'll usually get the markets falling in the fall. We get a lot of planets going through Libra. Sun's debilitated there. Scorpio is again bullish. It's a water sign. Sag is bullish. It's connected to Jupiter. Some upset sometimes. Capricorn, slow and steady. Aquarius is kind of bearish because it's an air sign. It just has more kind of that energy. And Pisces is, again, we said, bullishly idealistic. This is something to keep in the back of your mind. Again, how we use this, there are ways to use it, but it's just one piece of information. Again, this is another chart of this. So obviously, if you sign up for the class, you get all the PowerPoints for the course. I don't usually give the PowerPoints out just to people who are looking. You're welcome to take screenshots, if there's something that you really want to take a screenshot of. But obviously, I give you the PowerPoints if you sign up. Obviously, put a lot of time into these PowerPoints. And here's just another quick chart of the impact of signs. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of one section. We'll spend a little bit more time on that next week, so we get our core principles down. Again, it's our ABCs of business and financial astrology. I wanted to talk a bit about mundane astrology, and one of the things that I teach in my investment classes is, and I think it's important, I teach it in all my classes, is what's happening at a particular day and what kind of impact is that day having on the markets, and what impact is that having on me? And, these are types of things by software now that, will just kind of tell you how the transits are impacting you and stuff like that. But I think it's important to kind of, since I learned Vedic astrology by just kind of watching the transits every day, and they started talking to me, and that's how I developed kind of Jyoti, connection. So the planets talk to me, and I think it's important to develop that relationship. And looking at the transits every day is a good way to do that. So this is a chart for Chicago. I'm not in Chicago, but I ran it for Chicago, which is about 5 hours from here. And it's a chart of when the class started at 2:00. And we started at Libra rising. Venus is at the 8th house, I guess, for astrology. I didn't pick this time. I picked this time because it was a good time for me to teach the class. I didn't pick it for Muhurta. But what's happening today? Well, we have the class started right about, and we've got a new moon happening right at the beginning of class here. New moons, I always find new moons I have low energy. Now, lately I have a lot of energy, so I wasn't worried about it. Usually I don't plan anything for new moons, but just happened to be a good day to offer this class based on my schedule. But so we have a new moon today. A new moon is low energy, and the stock market's not doing a whole lot today. It's kind of sideways. Usually we like the moon in Cancer. The rising nakshatra of the stock market natal chart is 5 degrees of Cancer, and we're at 7. So it's kind of supportive. We have Venus at the end of the sign. I look at the Navamsha chart a lot, and although I didn't put it up here, Venus is debilitated in Virgo Navamsha here. And Virgo Navamsha tends to be a place where expansion is muted. Venus likes to expand like Jupiter, but Venus in Virgo doesn't like to expand. So it's not really a great expansive day today. Jupiter is still in Ardra Nakshatra in Gemini. We're waiting for it to go into Purnavasu in a week or so. It's always a nice transit. And Jupiter stays in Gemini. But often we're, in mundane astrology, we're looking, a lot of things stay the same, and we're looking for big changes. Mars is still conjunct Ketu within about 1 degree, and that was kind of intense the other day, although it didn't I had been worried about a lot of terrorism in the world. There were things happening over the last couple of weeks, but luckily, no major event. And many of you may not have noticed. I wrote about it in the newsletter. Saturn is closely conjunct Neptune. That was exact within 7 minutes on July 12th. They're slowly separating, but this only happens every 36 years. It's a big geopolitical marker. Again, it's not something you would use on a daily basis, but it's a big important event in the sky. Rahu's in Aquarius. It's in kind of a messy nakshatra, Purva Bhadrapada. Rahu throws a 30-degree aspect to the sign next to it. A lot of people don't know that. Sanjay teaches it. It's very accurate. So Rahu is aspecting Saturn. So that kind of increases anxiety a little bit overall. Not an exact aspect, but it's a signal aspect. And the new moon energy, moon Mercury is Mercury's retrograde now. If you read my articles, I don't think Mercury retrograde is the worst thing in the world. It's not bad. It's not great for certain things, but it's not bad for everybody. So one of the things that there's nothing dramatic today, but we can actually learn how to look at the transits very carefully to see the impact on the markets every day. And that's something I teach my investment course. I don't think we're going to get to do too much of it, but I wanted to, things that you're most interested in looking at is the ruler of the day is really one of the most important things that's happening. And so today is Thursday. It's ruled by Jupiter. One reason I'm teaching this class today is it's a good day for teaching because it's Jupiter's day. And I tend to have a lot of good energy on Jupiter's day and for being a teacher. So that's one reason that I get. But so the ruler of the day is very important. We like Jupiter to be happy. I think it's in Aquarius Navamsha at the moment. It's going to move into Pisces Navamsha, I think, in a day or two. So that actually has certain implications also. We always look at the new moon. Today we have the moon. Is the moon badly aspected by Saturn or Mars or Rahu or Ketu? That always creates kind of emotional turbulence. Today we have a new moon, which is kind of a weak. New moon energy is pretty weak. I don't. And generally, you don't do muhurtas or start new things in a new moon, even though sometimes the Western astrologers do that. But it is a place for planting seeds in the beginning sometimes, but I tend to wait to the second lunar day. I look closely at the aspects to the moon, the changes in the nakshatra intraday, the changes in the Navamsha midday, and those all have an impact. We're always looking at the major aspects too, what's going on, what are the bigger factors. But there are two levels, when we're looking at mundane astrology. What's changing today, what's happening today, what's the energy like, and the Panchanga becomes very important, the Tithi, the Karna, the Nitya Yoga, all those things we've been teaching recently. But on a bigger level, sometimes we're looking at a whole month when we're doing mundane astrology and analysis. I teach people to make calendars, and with those calendars, I ask them to look at the whole month. So the big thing, what are the big events happening this month? Well, Saturn conjunct Neptune was on July 12th, but it's really going on until October because they're very slow planets. Mars conjunct Ketu, was peaking this week, but it hasn't had an impact until the end of the month. And it's, those of you who are ruled by Mars, it's kind of, like you have all this kind of anger kind of festering in the background. So, but, it hasn't really impacted the markets too much other than, the Mars markets, sometimes giving it up a little bit. There are all these kind of rules about planetary aspects and financial astrology, and that's like 6 hours of material, which we're not going to get to, but it's in my investment class. We're always looking for clusters when we make our calendars. Are there like days where we just get a lot of aspects happening at the same time? I didn't see that many major clusters this month. Although there's a lot of major events happening this week. If we look at the outer planets, I'm not going to go there at the moment. When are key planets changing signs during the month? We always kind of chart that. When do they change nakshatras? So Mars goes into Virgo on July 28th this month, and Venus goes into Gemini on July 30th. So those are kind of big transitions. Venus is moving out of its own sign into a friend sign. Mars has been a little happy, is pretty happy in Leo, not so happy with Ketu, but it's going into an enemy sign with Virgo. Do we suddenly get any new major aspects because of a transit? So that's the type of thing you might see. Even last fall, Saturn in Pisces suddenly was aspecting Taurus, and Virgo and Sagittarius, so that's having an impact on those signs and those houses. Rahu in Aquarius, again, aspecting Pisces, Gemini, Libra, impacting technology. Jupiter in Gemini, aspecting Sag, Libra, and Gemini. So there's little things that we need to look at. One of the things that we do, we'll have a whole lesson on the stock market. Stock market is the hardest one to predict. In my financial astrology classes, I used to tell people to start with corn or soybeans, something simple that only just has a few planets, and it's much easier to figure out. The stock market is hugely complicated because it's a worldwide entity. It's got so many individual components into it. There are all these geopolitical components. It's very complicated. There are I've been accurately predicting it for many years, but and I'm not perfect, of course, because we get X events, but I built my business on really having a strong sense of it. But we can one of the things that when we get to the lesson on the stock market, the natal chart actually works. May 17th, 1792, New York. It was a couple of people getting together in the park and deciding to create the New York Stock Exchange. And funnily enough, I've used that chart for years and the dashas, and I've done studies on 200 years of dashas with it, and it works. It's quite amazing. And New York Stock Exchange is currently in a Mercury moon period. Now, Mercury is not the best planet for the stock market, but the moon is the best planet for the stock market. In the 50s, we had the golden Eisenhower years after the war. The stock market was in a moon major period. It rose the most of any period percentage-wise. So moon is a strong period. So this Mercury moon period on a small level is really supporting the strong bull market rally that's gone to new highs and will continue until January. So it's kind of interesting. The other important planets for the stock market are Mercury, which governs shares of stocks. Mercury kind of, things change very quickly with Mercury. Jupiter is, the planet of expansion. It's a very important planet for the stock market. Mars governs risk-taking, is very important. The moon, it's the natal chart lord. So those are the four most important planets, but, everything has some impact, of course. Historically, if you study things like outer planets are very important in financial astrology. So if you study the connection between Venus and Uranus aspects, which don't happen that often, we will, they often mark major important turns, like there's a 92% correlation between Venus and Uranus aspects. And if you know Uranus, it's a higher aspect of Mercury. It governs invention, and it's actually, it's the most benefic of the outer planets. And so Venus and Uranus have a good connection, and it's very supportive for the stock market. So we'd like to see Mercury aspected by Jupiter, because that often supports the stock market. Mars governs risk-taking, and if Mars is weak, if it's with Saturn, which will have an opposing Saturn in early August, people don't like to take risks. They're more cautious. So Mars is always important. Anyway, so we'll learn a little bit more about the stock market, and we'll have a whole lesson on the stock market. in the class, which is invaluable. Obviously, Saturn aspecting the moon is going to seem kind of bearish. Mars aspecting the moon is usually not very good. Eclipses are obviously important turning points. There are a lot of things that we'll learn. Okay. Again, it's the hardest one to do, but it's everybody's into it. Okay, we have a lesson on secrets of trading your own chart. So there are three components to financial astrology. You have to have the skill level to predict what the market's going to do. You have to have trading skills. There's some people that just don't know enough about trading and stop loss and managing money, and that's very common. We'll throw in some lessons on that in a couple of weeks. It's very important that you learn how to do that, otherwise you can't be successful. And some people are very conservative, and some people are gamblers, and so you have to really know who you are, and you have to know what dasha you're in. If you're in a Rahu period, you're in a gambling period, and you know what happens in Rahu periods. Things go up and they get taken away. So you have to kind of realize what's going on. Rahu sub period might be the same for you. It depends. You can make a lot of money in a Rahu period too, but you have to know when to take it out and not get greedy. Saturn periods, you could make money in a Saturn period if it's a good planet for you. Maybe more slow and steady. Saturn is connected to your fifth house. Maybe you need a conservative style of investment, and you shouldn't be a gambler. And people, with strong Mars in the first house or Rahu in the first house, and they're gunslingers. They just got to get in there every day and trade Tesla. You trade in a moon period, you may be too emotional. You've got to kind of watch when your ascendant is going through the 12th and the 8th houses. From trading my own money over the years, I'll do really well and I'll make all this money in the 11th house transits, and then everything moves into the 12th house, and I'm riding high and I'm thinking I'm invincible, and then I give it back. So you have to know when to stop. So you can trade off your own chart, you can trade off your own transits and your own dashas. We'll learn a little bit about that. And we can also trade off of Tarbala, for those of you who know nakshatra transits. We have to decide if your chart shows luck for investment. Some people have Lord of the 5th and the 9th, Lord of the 5th and the 11th, and you've got Jupiter aspects. Some people are just lucky with investing, and some people are just terrible. Lord of the 5th and the 12th, Lord of the 5th and the 8th, they just have bad luck. And so you have to kind of realize, what's your luck in investing? Does it change because your dasha period is changing? So it's very important things to learn. So we'll have a whole lesson on this, trading from your chart. There's yogas in your chart for successful speculation. The Dana yogas, Lord of the 5th and the 9th, Lord of the 9th and the 5th, Lord of the 5th and the 2nd, those kind of things. And it can get very complicated. Okay. I teach that 80% of timing is dasha analysis. So if you're in a bad dasha and you have good transits, it doesn't mean anything, because 80% of what's going to happen in your life is in the dasha. So if there's certain dasha combinations that are just always bad. Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, when the dashas are changing changing into a new dasha called dasha Sandhi, like Mars, Moon, or Sun, Venus. There's these periods that just by nature, there are exceptions, of course, but there are periods that are just by nature are difficult. So you have to be aware of them, and know when to trade more lightly. Unless you get to a skill level. I mean, I think it's hard to outsmart our psychology sometimes. I mean, I get fooled myself after all these years. I just think, oh, this looks like a great trade, and and I'm not paying attention to some big events that are happening, and it doesn't work because we all have blind spots. So you have to find a way to get through your blind spots. K2 periods ultimately take away the material. You can make money in a K2 period, with a Jupiter aspect, but you have to be aware of what's going on. Are your major transits supportive? Saturn, Rahu, K2, Jupiter. Yeah, you don't like Rahu and K2 transiting the 12th. You don't like Saturn going through the 12th, or Sadi saw it. Eighth house can bring all kinds of crazy things sometimes. So you just have to be aware of the transits too. We'll look at one of the most successful traders ever, a man called W.D. Gann, and we'll look at his chart in that lesson. Okay. Mundane astrology. Okay. Any questions? I'm not seeing questions. Let me see if anybody put anything in the chat. Oh, need to leave now. I hope I'll receive a copy of the recording. Okay, yeah, I will get copies of the recording to you. Yes, thank you. And I understand we have busy people are on their lunch schedules. Okay. I usually teach on Saturday, but I have another class on Saturday, and so I added this Thursday class. And a lot of people are retired. A lot of people will buy recordings and things like that. So that's why we're having a Thursday class. Okay. Mundane astrology. So if you run a corporate chart, let's say if you run a chart of Amazon and we have an accurate birth time, you can analyze the future of the company, based on the houses. And we'll spend a little time with this. It's kind of fascinating, but there's a whole different, and you can also do this for countries. So I'm fascinated by countries charts. I worked with the United States charts for a while. I've been on my video magazine. I've been doing like Iran and Israel lately. I'm totally fascinated by country charts, and we'll learn a lot about that in the course because I think it's just kind of fascinating. Anyway, there's some information on that. Yeah, I went over some of this already. Let's see. So with mundane astrology, we're often looking at major influences. So like Neptune tends to create speculative illusion, and expansion and dreaming, and sometimes you get, Neptune impacting something, and it just keeps going up because people are, are caught in this illusion, and then suddenly the illusion vanishes and the thing just falls apart. Uranus, is very important in mundane astrology. It creates surprises, sudden moves. I think when we had Uranus changing signs from Aries into Taurus within a day or something, there's some huge event that happened. It just, with that ingress. So Uranus is very important. The outer planets are very important in outer astrology. And Mars-Uranus aspects can create higher prices and scares and excitement, but they don't last for long. Saturn aspects sometimes are depressing. It's a symbol for business. Sometimes it will support Venus. Sometimes it can be a downer for Venus. And it's kind of funny. Saturn and Jupiter aspects are about manifesting, and they're often quite good. Saturn Jupiter periods. Sometimes they're quite good. Saturn Jupiter aspects are quite good. Jupiter is very expansive. Mars is about risk taking, and it's the gambler. And if it's hit by Saturn, or if afflicted by K2, sometimes more so by Saturn, it really kind of it's afraid to go out. So got the Mars Saturn opposition between Virgo and Pisces on August 8th and 9th. See what happens to the markets. They are unlikely to continue higher. Jupiter and Neptune aspects are, very expansive. They're both expansive planets, so kind of nice. Okay, let's see. With mundane astrology, we also get all these kind of interesting connections. Like Jupiter is connected to liberalism and tolerance and goodwill and desire for God and optimism and expansion. And Jupiter is in Libra or Taurus, it sometimes can be naive. And Jupiter is wise in certain signs. I find that when it's connected to Venus, it doesn't have good judgment, and that creates kind of problems with investing. And for people, I have you have to really be on top of seeing when Jupiter's afflicted. Jupiter in Capricorn, I mean, it can be very optimistic, but it's falsely optimistic. So when we look at Jupiter in mundane astrology, we have to decide, is there false optimism or is it real discrimination that's happening, real good judgment? Saturn seeks social order, enforces law and order, but negative patterns include intolerance, disciplinary, and protectionist extreme. Saturn is, Saturn doesn't take any prisoners. I love Saturn, but most people don't. But Saturn is so important in business, and it's so important in the business cycles. And it's not all bad all the time. I mean, Saturn is very powerful. I mean, we really have to see what happens with Saturn in Aries in 2027, and we have world war cycles happening next year, and Saturn in Aries is certainly not going to help. Uranus is idealistic, independent, self-reliant, rebellious, revolutionary. It's also kind of fun to watch in political cycles. Neptune is utopian, communal. Pluto is power of the masses, regeneration, redevelopment, and everything. It's die or become. Pluto is very important in mundane astrology. We'll look more at it. It's interesting, when we look at mundane astrology, we have to look at major planetary pairs. If we're doing world economic cycles, we need to kind of look at these important pairings. The one that's currently happening is Saturn-Neptune. It happens every 36 years. You read my article the last time we had Saturn-Neptune. The Berlin Wall came down. The Soviet Union disintegrated. You can see even this year, we have a lot of realignment happening in the world. We have the emergence of the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, China, India, and all the African countries that are now connecting with them. They want to take down the dollar and the dollar hegemony. And they're starting to gain a lot of traction. And you can see in the larger cycles that the power is going to shift from the West, which has held it for a while, to the East, probably by 2030. And this is all part of this kind of restructuring that's starting with Saturn and Neptune. The restructuring of NATO is kind of a part of the Saturn-Neptune restructuring. The realignment of the Middle East. Now, if you think about what's happened in the Middle East, Israel is suddenly kind of, a lot of people want to be friends with Israel, and Iran's starting to be on the outs, and a lot of people are happy that Iran is on the outs, and so we've had a whole realignment in the Middle East, and I think it seems like it's for the best. And it's not complete yet, but that's all part of the Saturn-Neptune energy. So these outer planet pairings are very important. You can study them in mundane astrology. They're absolutely fascinating for predicting world economic trends and things. This was 2014. Let's see. Jupiter-Saturn is another one. We get it every 20 years. We have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction every 20 years and the opposition every 10 years. And these Saturn-Jupiter aspects are very, very important for world economic forecasting too, and we'll spend a little time looking at that. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I actually may end early today. I have a lot of other material. I kind of wanted to kind of give you an overview. And I know a lot of people are working today and maybe watching during their lunch hour, so I wanted to make sure that we have time. So yeah, somebody's asking a question about their K2 Mahadasha. They're not sure if this is a good time for stocks, but they're taking astrology courses and cardiology classes in the past year, and that's kind of fascinating. Yeah, whenever we're in a K2 period, we do end up studying astrology, and so yeah, whether we can. The thing, as you know, about Vedic astrology is there's 1,000 shades of gray. I mean, in general, yeah, K2 may not be a great period, but um, you know, if you have K2 connected to Jupiter and it's in good houses like the 11th house, you can make a lot of money in a K2 period. You just, if it's in the 12th house and it's afflicted by Saturn, it's a whole different thing. So every chart is individual, and we have to kind of look specifically at it. I mean, but and there may be sub periods in the K2 period that may work. So it's something to be aware of. Interesting question. Let's see if there's anything in the chat box. That's interesting. Okay. Other questions? So I am hoping to start the class next Thursday at 2 p.m. I picked this time because Thursdays is a good day for me. I teach another class on Saturdays, which used to be the other time that I used to teach classes. But for those of you who can't come live on Thursday, and some of you are here, there will be tapes that you can always watch and rewatch, and then you can watch them indefinitely. You can download them, and you have copies of them. If you take the course, you do get the PowerPoints, and my PowerPoint notes are just kind of amazingly detailed. So again, if you're interested in taking the course, you can email me. My personal email address, swford@gmail.com. And I had given you a link for signing up for the class. It's under my applied Vedic astrology.com. You can snap a picture of it. And it's under the live webinar tab, and you'll see the course. And there's an early bird discount of $395. If you sign up by next Tuesday, if you need a payment plan, I ideally go with your credit card, but we can set something up on PayPal if you need that option. I wanted to see if there anybody. Let's see if Elizabeth's still here. Those of you don't. Oh, you are here. Okay, Elizabeth, do you want to share your experience taking classes with me?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been taking classes with Barry. I don't even know how many years now. It's been a few. His PowerPoints are incredibly detailed. He puts so much time and love into these courses, and you get so much information, and he just really makes everything easy to understand. And you walk away being like, oh my gosh, I just learned so much. And you get the recording, so you get to re-listen to it, which makes it even better. But I can't recommend Barry enough. I recommend him to a lot of people when I talk about classes to take. So I am very appreciative of Barry and everything he does.
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Yeah, it's hard to kind of promote yourself, as you know, but my favorite thing in the world is teaching Vedic astrology. It's actually I do a lot of other things. I write my newsletters. I do Vedic astrology consultations. I write newsletters on financials, investment every day, twice a day. I have a huge life, but my absolute favorite thing of the week is teaching Vedic astrology. You can tell I just have a lot of a stationary Jupiter in the 8th house of astrology, and it's in Purnavasu. And so I just have a lot of energy that comes up whenever I teach, and I just have a lot of clarity, and I feel very blessed that I'm able to teach, and it's my absolute favorite thing. So for those of you who, like I said, if you don't want to take this live class, if you go on my website, appliedvedicastrology.com, under courses, I have about 40 canned courses, including the Money Karma 1 and 2 classes, if you want to know about personal finance in your life. There's courses on career and life purpose. There are classes on medical astrology, courses on dashas and transits, and I'm just finishing up a class on Muhurta and Panchanga, and we'll be starting a course on Vargas at the end of August. It's Varga 1, so it's going to be on the Navamsha, the Dasamsha, and the D12 and the D60 and the D3. So I'm only going to spend 16 weeks on 5 Vargas and really do them in depth. I haven't taught Vargas since 2018, so I'm excited to do that. So that's coming up. If you get my astrology newsletter, you'll see a link to sign up for the first free class. Okay. Other questions and answers? Let's see. Okay, so this is kind of a fascinating class because I'm not teaching a purely investment astrology class, which is like how to trade corn and beans, which I've done before. I'm doing a new class because I'm kind of I'm wanting to teach people a lot of different things about business astrology. So we're going to be looking at corporate charts, going to be looking at mundane astrology and larger business cycles. We're going to be looking at whether you're a trader or not in your chart. We're going to be looking at maybe trading the most specific markets that we're interested in. So a lot of different things in this this course, something for everybody. And again, if you're looking for personal, how do I make more money from my chart? What career should I do? I have classes on that on my website. This course is not covering that, but I have specialized and taught those things before in Money Karma 1 and 2 and Finding Your Life Purpose. So those are available on my website if you want to study those. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll let you go early, and we always have lots of things to do. Okay, so again, thank you for coming today. I hope when I started the broadcast, it said that it wasn't recording in the cloud, but it means it records on my desktop, and so I may have to upload it to YouTube and send a link for those of you who want to replay it, or for those of you who want to watch it again. And again, please join me, and if you have any questions, please email me. And thank you all for coming. And last call for questions, answers, thoughts. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll see you next week. And for those of you who like investment information, what I think about the markets, you can get my newsletter, and you can also come to my video magazine, which is once a month, and there are links on the website for that. Let me show you that. Yeah, so the next live webinar for my financial video magazine is on Thursday, August 14th. On weeks that we have my video magazine, if you sign up for the class, you get to attend the video magazine for free, because we won't be having class. So I should mention that. So this class is actually 3 times a month. Then you get a free video magazine on the 4th Thursday. And all those things are always recorded also. Okay, guys, we will see you next week, hopefully. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a great week.